Ole, 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 ole. Another national championship for Clemson men's soccer. Fourth star in the Shield, second in 3 years. What a program. What a job Mike Noonan is doing there. Congratulations to all those guys. There's a friend of a friend I found out is one of the players on the team, so I'm excited for him as well. And for those who know him from the Charlotte area, also a lot of news on the football field. A couple of practices under the Tigers' belt as we record this, and we will get you ready for the Gator Bowl and some of the latest developments with that bunch of terrific athletes.
I'm Daniel Shirley. I was wondering how you got that shirt so early, but that one's from 2 years ago. So
It is, yeah.
Really exciting game last night. I can tell you I watched every second of that game, and I watched every second of the semifinal game, all the playoff games, the ACC tournament as well. I watched most of the regular season games. But I think last night was as much as I've ever been into a soccer game. I'm not a huge soccer fan. I watch Clemson soccer. I watch U.S. men and women's soccer. That's about it. I don't watch Premier League. I don't watch the MLS. Nothing against it. It's just not really in my wheelhouse. But Clemson soccer is in my wheelhouse. And to see what this team has accomplished in 3 years, what Coach Noonan and that staff have built toward and now have accomplished, is special. And, Bill, we were in our teens when Clemson was a powerhouse in soccer. It's been a while, but they're back to being a powerhouse again. And that's a special, special thing to see. And, Coach Noonan said last night, it's all the programs on campus. You can see this building. The women's team went to the cup as well, right? The basketball team's undefeated. The baseball team and the softball team feel like they're, about to take that next step. And then obviously our focus a lot on this podcast is football. And it doesn't feel like they're too far from getting back to being, a playoff top 10 kind of a team. So it's a special time for sure. And it was really cool last night to watch that game.
Yep, I'm Bill Zimmerman. He's Daniel Shirley. This is the Reign Supreme Alway podcast, getting close to 100 episodes, a much lesser milestone than 2 national championships in 3 years, which the men's soccer team has done, the football team has done. You can check out all our episodes from the last year plus at youtube.com/Clemson Kickoff. We haven't been posting to the podcast services as much lately, so that's really a good place to catch us. Also, our website, ClemsonKickoff.com, has those episodes. And by the way, jump in on those YouTube files. Jump in on those comments down below. Tell us what we're forgetting to say. Tell us where you think we're getting it wrong, and then build on the points if you think we're getting right. Jump in on that conversation. We want this to be a community for everybody, and we're committed to keeping this a free podcast as well. I just want to mention a couple of names who really stood out the last few in the College Cup for the men's soccer team. Obviously, Ousmane Sylla, who has just been so huge for both title runs, very talented striker, just unbelievable what he can do on offense and some of the goals that he has scored, including the one he had in the championship game. You're glad to see him get one. He's so deserving because of all the hard work and talent that he brings out to the pitch for those guys. You got to mention Brandon Parrish. My goodness, the Louisville native playing in his hometown. Scores a goal last night and then makes a huge save on one of the rare times that keeper Joseph Andema was out of position. He backs him up. He makes sure he's got the team covered and bicycle kicks a ball over the top of the goal. Really, the depth on this team is very good, very functional. There's no place that they're really weak, but those are 3 guys that you have to mention. And then Shawn Smart in the semifinal, with his one-touch goal, which was just amazing to the top right corner of the goal. All highlight goals, all 3 of those goals in Louisville. And you're really, like you mentioned, a powerhouse program, and you love to see them kind of back where you and I, when us as a couple of old heads, remember them being very competitive under I.M. Ibrahim. Now they've got Mike Noonan, and they are, what's the line from Animal House? Forget it. They're rolling, they're in great shape. So let's go ahead and move on to the Gator Bowl and Clemson football. And I want to bring up real quick, to me, the highlight of Dabo Swinney's media availability, on Tuesday, which is that Will Shipley is expected to play in this bowl game. And that's a guy who you and I have been waiting to hear the official word come out. And Dabo Swinney says, hey, long-term future, that's for him to put out there. And Dabo doesn't want to rain on his parade. He wants that to be his moment to talk about what his future plans are going into next season. But for the bowl game, he's expected to play. And to me, as well as Clemson played without him against Notre Dame, as much as Phil Maffa and Dominique Thomas were able to take over the running game, Klubnik, maybe that was the impetus for him running a little bit more, not a ton more, but a little bit more. But this is a better team with Will Shipley in there because he's got that creativity once he gets in the open field. Maybe Maffa's a little better at finding that open field, but I think Will Shipley, once he gets there, has that athleticism to do a little bit more with it.
I think it's huge. And again, we'll find out about next year. Next year's next year, right? I mean, this is about finishing off this season with a win. I don't know that I buy momentum from season to season. I buy confidence from season to season. And if Will Shipley's back next year, I think you have a lot more confidence going into next season. I think if he is back next year, I think you will see a guy motivated not to put the ball on the ground, not, because we know how competitive he is, how motivated he is. And that's been his one bugaboo this year. I mean, look, he's had another really good year, except for the fumbles. And if there's any reason why he's not drafted as high as he would want, or as we would think he would be, I would think it would be the fumbles from this year and just those mistakes. And look, Maffa made mistakes too. I mean,
and
Klubnik, right? You think about not even just the fumbling mistakes, but remember the blitz pickup against Florida State, and that leads to the scoop and score. So, I mean, there's all of that stuff is involved in it. I would hope that Maffa stays if Shipley comes back, because I think they work better together than they do separately. Both of them, I do. And I think that gives you a base next year for the offense to improve. And there need to be some big improvements with this offense. And that starts up front. We know that. I mean, I think you and we talk about offensive line maybe more than a lot of people do when they discuss college football. But that's our focus. Is you have to be good in the trenches if you're going to be great. And Clemson's not been great offensively on the line, have they? I mean, so even in the two championship teams, they weren't great. They weren't maulers. They weren't these group that you just dominate up front. They were good. They were good, and then they were good enough to do what you needed them to do to showcase all that talent.
Right, but third
on the
and
outside.
Short, even with those groups, third and short, fourth and short, it felt like a 50-yard, 50-50 ball.
It was a chore, yes.
To not necessarily your best receivers at getting a 50-50 ball either, right? But then a lot of times you did see them kind of part the ways, and you'd see ETN slip through, Gallman slip through. They knew how to find those holes once they were there and knew where to look for them. But you're right. They were not the old Danny Ford, hey,
oh, no way.
Go eat 2 yards and guarantee that the running back will get at least that.
Yeah, it's just a different way of doing it, right? Mm-hmm. And how many times, even before the championship run started with this current iteration of the program, did Taj Boyd have to get 1.5 yards?
Yep. By
just being Taj Boyd. I'm going to fight for 1.5 yards. And then Deshaun Watson, he ran. I mean, Taj Boyd ran way too much for my liking, but they had to. Deshaun ran a lot. Trevor ran probably more than we would like. But they were good enough. The last 2 years, 3 years, they really haven't been good enough on the offensive line, and that's why they're not in the playoff. I mean, the defense this year, even with all of my complaining, was good enough for this team to be in the playoff. Tackling issues notwithstanding, if the defense does what it did this year and the offense is just good, this team's in the playoff. They would have beaten Florida State. They should have beaten Florida State.
Yes.
They should have beaten Miami. They should have beaten Duke.
They definitely should have beaten NC State.
Should have beaten NC State.
I mean,
and I think they would have beaten Florida State again.
Yeah.
If they played them again, or Louisville. They outplayed Florida State until they got to overtime. They never trailed until they got to overtime. And they just made the one huge mistake. Think about those losses.
Yeah.
The Duke game, the big mistakes. How many? 3 or 4, right? Florida State, the one huge mistake. Miami, there were a couple of big time mistakes.
Yep.
And then NC State game, the pick 6 and the one bust on defense.
Right.
And so you're that close. Really?
Yep.
Can you see my fingers that close? I'm squishing your head like on Kids in the Hall. But so but if you're just good on the offensive line, you can showcase Cade Klubnik, Will Shipley, Phil Moffa. And that opens things up for Brenningstool, right?
Yeah.
To give him time to get the ball.
Right.
And Brown and Antonio Williams when he's healthy. And these receivers coming in, I think, are really going to help. I really believe this group coming in is going to be a big time bonus. So just having Shipley and Moffa both back gives you a base if they can clean up the offensive line.
Yep. By the way, those receivers, Bryant Wesco out of Texas, easy for me to say, 2 syllables. Come on, get it. And then TJ Moore, who I think is from Virginia. Is that right?
Yeah.
Though they are very highly rated and absolutely expected to jump in there and maybe be what we expected Adam Randall to be before that ACL injury. And who knows, maybe Randall is with a good full season under his belt, ready to emerge. We've seen glimpses of it. So looking forward to that in the receiving core. There's one thing I want to kind of turn on its ear of what you talked about with running the quarterback and maybe having seen Taj Boyd or Trevor Lawrence run more than we wanted to, but we've also seen what happens to this offense when you cannot run the ball as much as you would like to, with DJ Uiagalelei being the lone really capable quarterback 2 years ago, and then Cade Klubnik this past season, and not wanting to put him at risk without a clear number 2 behind him and a bunch of guys, probably Hunter Helms, who I would feel fairly comfortable with in a lot of games, but not a Power 5 playoff contender caliber of quarterback, if you ask me. And I'm looking forward to see him succeed, getting a starting opportunity wherever he's going to land. I think he's going to be someone worth following coming up. The same band of quarterback reserves will be back next year. And so will Klubnik be able to run the ball again? Dabo Swinney saying Tuesday. Paul Tyson has another year of eligibility. He will continue to be a student coach in that quarterback room. Yep. And then you'll have Christopher Vizina and Trent Pierman as the other 2 backups in the room. So in fact, you lose Helms actually, but the same cast of guys beyond that. Not a lot of okay, well, if Klubnik, has a knee stinger and needs to check out for a few plays, we'll see what happens. I think more importantly for the bowl game coming up, let's look at the cornerbacks, because there is not going to be a Nate Wiggins presence in that game. He will be going to the pros and opting out of the bowl game. We've got some injuries in that room with Sheridan Jones, who has left it all on the field apparently, and between hip problems and migraines is just needs to call it a career. So you're going to be looking at a preview of next year with Avion Terrell, who I've been confident in ever since he committed. Good bloodlines, good information lines, really, before he even got into the program, more important than DNA, or as important perhaps, has proven himself in the second half of the year. Shelton Lewis has really started to shine, and so those 2 guys are expected to be the starters, not only for the bowl game, but I would think for next year. Then beyond that, things are really thin. So you want to see those 2 guys stay healthy, be conditioned enough to play the entire game, Khalil Barnes could play some corner, and I think we're all confident in him being a top level ball player, but we haven't seen him a lot at pure corner. He's been more at nickel in there. We'll see some perhaps Hamp Green, perhaps Tink Kelly, perhaps Miles Oliver, who was a good recruit, just as has needed to recover from injury, but apparently he looks ready to go. So that's going to be a thin room. Thank goodness the Kentucky passing game has not been what it was expected to be under Devin Leary, and you hope that a few weeks of bowl practice just isn't going to be enough to quite turn that around for them. And then hopefully the defensive front seven, despite missing Jeremiah Trotter Jr., will be able to find a way to disrupt him, keep him off balance, bust through that Kentucky offensive line, a team that Coach Mark Stoops has built in the trenches. And, no easy feat, and having a thin secondary doesn't make it any easier.
No, it doesn't. And I mean, you're thank goodness you're not playing a run and shoot team or whatever that's going to have five wides out on every play. Yeah. I think that would really put some pressure on this secondary. Look, I love Avion Terrell. I as much as any cornerback as they've had in a long time, he stepped in, and he didn't, play a lot right away, but once he got into the lineup, it was obvious he's paid attention to his brother. And, I'm not saying he's living in his brother's shadow or anything, but you can tell he and his brother have talked about some things, and he's paid attention. And I think he's got a chance to be special. I mean, I really think he's the next Nate Wiggins, right? Nate Wiggins, his freshman year, didn't do a whole lot and grew into that. And Avion is further along than Nate Wiggins was at this point. So I love what those two guys bring, and we'll see what happens in this game. But it's going to be interesting. Dabo said that Tink Kelly probably could play if they need him, and they might need him. So that's going to be really the one position, don't you feel like, Bill, where there's been enough injuries and enough portal stuff that they are a little shorthanded going into this game. I mean, everybody's going to be shorthanded going into these bowl games because of the portal, but that's the one spot where it feels like Clemson's going to be kind of at a disadvantage because of the portal and some of the injuries. I mean, Jaden Lucas and some of this other stuff.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Jaden Lucas, and then also Brandon Strozier, who we haven't seen much of this year, but you were high on him coming in as a corner. Hey, yep. In Mike Reed, you and I trust, right? I mean, maybe that's the most important thing AJ Terrell said to Avion Terrell is listen to Mike Reed, because he'll put you in the league, right?
Yeah.
Some other coaches have joined this staff that can put guys in the league, Matt Luke and Chris Rumpf at offensive line and defensive end, respectfully. Some tweets and some video out there in those tweets of those guys in action during some media access today. Again, Tuesday, as we record this, I'll hopefully get this up before dinner time on Tuesday, so it'll be nice and fresh. And if I can find a way to capture those videos, this is not my area of technical expertise, too much gray hair here to be a whiz at that kind of stuff. But if I can find a way to capture those and put those at the end of this podcast, I will do that. It was really interesting to see Chris Rumpf kind of coming down on some guys and saying, hey, don't be soft. Don't, are we the hammer or the nail? Be the hammer is what he said to Cade Denoff, and then made Denoff do that rep again, and then complimented him on doing a better job. And then Matt Luke, a little more smiles, a little more, hey, getting to know you kind of approach in this offensive line. And I think, though, that both also have been hitting the recruiting trail right away. A prediction from multiple sites that Matt Luke has landed Elijah Thurman to commit, I believe, on
signing day. No, they on signing day.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
yeah.
right.
I thought it was supposed to be yesterday, but I read last night that it's going to be on the 20th. So
right. And then Rumpf out there as well, hitting the road and talking to recruits. A lot of in-homes with guys who are commits already, making sure that they are locked down and they become signees. We mentioned the 20th. I've also seen the 19th. So I'm not sure which of those dates is correct on signing day, but
signing day is the 20th.
So we are a week away from signing day coming around, and
how about
as we record this, yeah. And it'll be good to go get those guys in the fold, get some of them to the bowl practice and to see what's going on. And especially the guys in the Southeast who have an easy trip to Jacksonville. I know you're planning to go. I'm hoping to work that out and get myself there as well. And
Yep.
got some family in that area, so it should be a lot of fun. Where
We're
do
staying
you,
with your family in that area too, right?
is that right?
Yeah, I'm volunteering your family to let us stay with it. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. But no, it's exciting to see. Look, you don't want anybody to be fired. I know that that's what we do in sports is we question coaches. It's what we do.
In an X's and O's way.
Right. But
yeah,
when somebody gets fired, it impacts their family, it impacts their kids. You don't wish that on anybody. But you do, as Dabo Swinney said this week, that's his job, is to do what's right for the program. And I think he did what's right for the program on both of these spots. These are two really, really good hires. I mean, I'm as big a Matt Luke fan as there is in the world, maybe outside of his mother and his father. I think he's the best. He's one of the best offensive line coaches in the country. Bringing Chris Rump back surprised me, but he's terrific. And to see that intensity, hearing great things about him coming out of practice. So really excited about those two hires. I think they're both steps up in nothing against Coach Hall and Coach Austin, but I think they are both will elevate their position groups in recruiting and in development. And probably maybe even in the portal. Dabo said today that for recruiting, they want to add another linebacker and they want to add another offensive lineman. And, I think they're going to target those in the portal as well, defensive end in the portal, and we'll see. But I think it's going to be an interesting, week and a half here before we get ready for the bowl game.
Absolutely. One other thing I want to sneak in there real quick, speaking of the bowl game, RJ Mickens, who you and I had mentioned, and kind of a string of names and guys who we didn't expect to be there, and a lot of the others had already announced. So we'll call this a correction. He has not announced yet. He has not made his decision yet, according to Dabo Swinney. I don't think I clarified that very well as I put his name out there. So that's why I'll put that out there. We're still waiting to see, according to Coach Swinney, what RJ Mickens will choose. I think a lot of people expect him to go pro, but you want to do your homework and find out, hey, can you move up if you come back and play another year? What are the things to work on? And then, so we'll wait and see what that decision is when it officially happens. But I just wanted to be fair about that as best I could. So should be, like you said, a very interesting couple of weeks, especially practice the next several days. And then I guess there'll be a Christmas break, and then they'll reconvene and put their finishing touches on before the bowl game. So again, youtube.com/Clemson Kickoff. Check out that last episode. People loved it. People loved seeing more of what we had to say about Matt Luke and Chris Rumpf and a lot of other things in the state of Clemson athletics. And until our next episode, I'm Bill Zimmerman.
I'm Daniel Shirley. Go Tigers.